Okay, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أما بعد. Oops. Okay. So last week we had covered the story in regards to the so last week we covered a story in regards to the marriage of Hazrat Zainab to Muhammad Sallam. So the last point that I wanted to cover, which subhanAllah, I never got the chance to mention, was one of the most outstanding things about that story was if we go back to the ayah of that Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about how Muhammad Sallam had told Zayd bin Haritha that he should hold on to his wife and that he should fear Allah. And Allah said to him but you know in your heart that you were going to marry her. What was interesting about the whole ayah was Zayd bin Haritha was the only Sahabi that was actually mentioned by name in the Quran. So many of the scholars, they say that this was the status and the privilege and the respect that was given to Hazrat Zayd in terms of giving him that status of the Quran. And you can imagine now that everybody, from the time when the Quran was revealed, is continuously reciting his name. So this in itself states a particular kind of relationship that almost Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has established with Zayd bin Haritha. So that's an important thing to remember, because not many people are mentioned. There is references to many Sahabi in the Quran, but not necessarily their names have been mentioned. So we know, for example, on the opposite side, in terms of people who have committed evil acts against Muhammad sallam, we know that people like Abu Lahab were mentioned. But on the opposite side, on the affirmative, in the side of good happening, we don't really see that happen many times for many of the Sahabi, and so Zayd bin Haritha was given that privilege. Now, like I mentioned last week, that this period of time between the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th year after Hijrah, so this is the 4, 5, 6 years after the time when Muhammad sallam migrated to Medina, it's very confusing about what events occurred first. So I'm not going to focus too much on the particular order. We can get into that in another conversation, but it's not really for this particular audience. So one of the expeditions that occurred during this period, and we're talking about the sixth year after Hijrah, so probably in the early stages of that year, and then we're going to talk about events that occurred during that year, going towards the sort of the end of that year. One of those was a story which was referred to the expedition against the Du Qarad. Du Qarad is an actual area. It's like a water reservoir where that's the location of it, which is approximately about a day's journey outside of Medina. So what happened in this particular event was that there was a man by the name of Abdurrahman Uwaina bin Hisn who had attacked one of the shepherds of Muhammad sallam, kidnapped his wife, and stole 20 milch camels, which belonged to Muhammad sallam. Now, just to kind of give you a little bit of backdrop behind that, if we kind of go back to the Battle of the Trench, if you remember the part of the story where Muhammad sallam, when things were getting so difficult, Muhammad sallam reached out to the Ghatafan tribe to negotiate a deal with them, whereby he would offer them a certain amount of the produce of Medina to these people just so that they can leave the battle. It was less than obviously what the Jews had offered them, but from their perspective, it's like it's free money we can take without even engaging in any particular fight. Now, the person that he was negotiating with was this man who then did this attack on Muhammad sallam or Muhammad sallam's land, this man by the name of Abdurrahman Uwaina bin Hisn. And the reason why he had his backup is simply because of the fact that Muhammad SAW broke the deal or broke the negotiations with the Ghatafan tribe. Because we know that, because when he asked people like Sa'd bin Mu'adh in regards to whether he should do this deal or not, they categorically said, we are not going to do this deal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide us with the victory. We never gave these people any of our produce other than when they were our guests. Why would we give them under such conditions? So they disagreed with Muhammad SAW and said, we don't want to do this. And because it wasn't a revelation, Muhammad SAW was happy with their decision and went with that. And obviously this left a very bad taste in the mouth of Abdurrahman Uyayna bin Hisn. So Muhammad SAW was actually out on an expedition against the Banu Lihan. If you remember last week, we talked about the assassination of Khalid bin Sufyan, who were also part of the Banu Lihyan. But Banu Lihyan is a very large tribe, so there was multiple attacks and skirmishes that were done against Banu Lihyan. And just to give you a reminder, they were the tribe that came to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, Ya Rasul, will you not send us some qadi? Will you not send us some people who can teach us about Islam? And they took them, invited them to their camps, and they turned against them and they killed the Qadins, and they took, Hazrat Khubayb and handed them over to the Quraysh. And so that's why there was these back and forth expeditions that were continuously happening. Now, Muhammad SAW was out of town at that time. Some say that he was actually returning from one of the expeditions against Banu Lihyan. And Abdurrahman Uyayna took the opportunity out of anger with 40 of his men, came to the outskirts of Medina and attacked one of the shepherds, killed him, took his wife as a hostage, or even as a slave. They captured her and they took 20 to 40 of Muhammad Sallam's camels, and they escaped. Now, while this was happening, there was a man by the name of Salama ibn al-Aqwa. He was one of the Sahabi, and he was riding from Medina, going out into the into the open land. And as he sort of went past, he was grazing his own animals. He went and he took one of the slaves with him, and immediately he had noticed that these camels had been stolen. There was a man that was killed, and this obviously caused an alarm. So Salama said to the slave, Rafa his name was, that go back into Medina. Muhammad sallam should be back, and send the alarm out that this is what's happened, that we've had a raid against us. So this slave went back to Medina, and Salama went to the highest point of a mountain that he could get to, and from that point he screamed out very, very loudly, Sabaha, which means it's a cry for help. It's a cry for support. So he went out there and he cried out, asking for help. And he described that he shouted so loud that anything between the two valleys, between the two mountains, the valleys of Medina, everybody could hear this man shouting out this scream for help. So now Salama pursued the team and the army of Uyayna, and as he chased them, he's described that he caught up to these people. Now there was about 40 of them, and he was one single man. And as he was chasing them, obviously they were taking these camels with them, so they were not going as fast on horseback. They had to take all these camels that they had stolen. So Salama chased them, and he eventually got to these sort of like kind of woody area, palm trees and so forth. And when he got to this area, he caught their attention. So they came back to try to kill him, to stop him, Salama, from chasing them. Salama described that he's crouched down by the base of these trees, took out his arrows, and everyone that came, he started shooting them and firing at them. And he said that there was not one person that he missed. So there was a group of people that he literally took down. And as he was knocking them, taking them out, shooting arrows into their shoulders, into their chest, into their horses, he started shouting out, I'm Ibn al-Aqwa, to give them a call, to let them know who he is, so they understand that he's not going to give up. And he said, today the wicked will die. So he mentioned how he kept on firing and fighting. And as they kept on dropping, he went forward, and obviously these soldiers, they had their own goods that they had with them. They had armories, so they had lances, they had swords, they had shields, then they had coats. Probably they'd done a raid somewhere else as well. Because remember, we talked about the Ghatafan tribe, that this particular tribe, all they used to do was raid people. Caravans used to come from the north, they come from the south. They used to raid people. They were hitmen, they were assassins, they were for hire. That's what they used to do. That was their living. So obviously they must have raided a few other camps or people on their way. So when Salamah had got to their horses, when they had been killed by him, he found that there was lances, there were 30 coats, there were like 30 lances and swords, and he picked them up and he would put them behind him and he would hide them under the rocks and so forth. And then he would push forward. So they would have to get past him to get to this as well. And he carried on chasing them. Eventually he got to a point where he climbed up one of the mountains, and when he got to that mountain, they would try to chase him again. A few other people would come back to try and kill him, and he would start hurling stones and rocks at them. Now, what happened was, Abdurrahman Uwaina said to his soldiers, he said, look, this man will continuously fight us. He will continuously start to chase us. The best thing for you guys to do, go as a group, chase him and take him out. The moment you do that, he will either run away or you will kill him. But if we keep moving, he will keep chasing, and he's going to be a problem for us. So they tried to climb up the mountain, they tried to chase him, and he kept on throwing these massive large rocks and boulders from the top, and he wouldn't budge his position. And he told them that you're not going to be able to kill me. I will kill you from this position, but you will not get near me. And one of their men who were trying to kill him said, you know what, he's absolutely right, there's no point, and they returned back. Now, as they went back down again, Salamah could see Muhammad Sallam arriving with the cavalry. And there were a good 200-300 men with him. Now, when he arrived there, with him, with Muhammad Sallam, was a Sahabi by the name of Al-Akram. He was the leader of that cavalry. Abu Qatada was also with them. And Abu Qatada was very famously known, obviously you know him for his hadiths as well, but he was very famously known as one of the best horse riders in Medina, or even the Arabian Peninsula. Very, very brilliantly skilled horse rider. And another Sahabi by the name of Al-Miqdad. Salma made his way down the mountain, met these guys, and he took the reins of the horse that Al-Akram was sitting on. And he said to Al-Akram that, look, the men have come, I've taken out whoever I can, but Uwaina has now moved forward. But he said to Akram that because the way they work is when you've got cavalry, and you have a leader, the leader will always be a few good yards, few hundred meters ahead of you, so that he can check and make sure the passage is safe, there's no attacks, because Muhammad Sallam is behind him with the rest of the army. So when he took the reins of the horse, he said to Al-Akram, listen, be very careful as you go forward. They can be around, right? They may be around and they may ambush you, and you are alone at the front. Al-Akram's response to Salamah was, "O Salamah, if you truly had faith in Allah and the last day, and you knew that heaven and hell are real, would you still try and block my way to martyrdom?" What's interesting about this statement is about how the mentality and the mindset of the Sahabi was such that any opportunity, whether it's big or small, whether it's a huge war or just a skirmish or just a basic expedition, these guys are always prepared for death. And it's not just the concept of that fact that they're prepared for death, it's the motivation to actually go to the other side, to go past this life and to go to the other side to get the reward from Allah. There is a level of conviction which we fail to find within ourselves in this 20th century. They had the knowledge, they had the hikmah, they had the teaching of Muhammad Sallam to the extent that they would challenge each other that, why are you in my way to achieving martyrdom? Get out of my way. Every time we come out, that's what we try to achieve. And Salamah understood this. And so therefore he came out of his way. And lo and behold, Al-Akram, as he went forward, and he was way ahead of Muhammad Sallam and the rest of the cavalry. Uwaina saw Al-Akram come, and he turned his horse around and he went for the attack. And they had a fight back and forward, but unfortunately for Al-Akram, he got killed by Uwaina. He got stabbed by a lance and he dropped. And so he achieved his martyrdom, and which is what he wanted to gain in terms of Islam. Then Abu Qatada saw this, and he was on a horse, and very quickly, because he was a very fast rider, he rode very quickly to Uwaina and he engaged in fighting with him. And there was a back and forward going on, and eventually Abu Qatada did sustain an injury, but he overcame Uwaina and he killed him. Salama now said that when I saw this happen and I saw the rest of the men escape, now Salama was not on horseback. He said, I ran, I chased them, and I ran forward so fast. They were obviously on horseback, so they had gone way ahead. And as they rode their horses, they came to an area called Duqarad, which was an area like a reservoir where there was water. He said, I ran so quick and so fast. He said, I knew that they were in front of me, but when I looked behind me, I couldn't even see the dust that was being kicked up by the horses with Muhammad Sallam. That's how far I left back Muhammad Sallam and the cavalry. When I came towards this reservoir and I saw them, they stopped by to feed their horses water and their camels. When they saw me coming, they quickly jumped onto the horses and they ran. Because obviously they saw Salama come, they thought, then the others are not too far behind, and they ran. And he said, I caught one man and I fought him and I killed him. And two of the horses were left behind. They were too tired and they couldn't obviously race off. So I took the horses and I started walking back. And eventually, it was only like about 5-10 minutes, and Muhammad Sallam turned up. When Muhammad Sallam turned up, he was very impressed by the fact that I ran so quickly and I chased these men off. And Salama said to Muhammad Sallam, Ya Rasul, can I request one thing from you? Give me 100 of your men, and I swear I will chase these men down and I will get them. And Muhammad Sallam, he laughed. He says, Salama, I admire your aspiration to do this good, and you are a true warrior. But let me tell you now, those men, they're probably already back at their tribe having a drink. So don't worry about that. And so Muhammad Sallam, he had this immense amount of respect for Salama. And he said in a hadith, he said, Abu Qatada is the finest of all our horsemen, but the best foot soldier or the best foot warrior is Salama. And he awarded Salama with both the share of a horseman and that of a foot warrior. And that was the respect that was given to him. On their way back, as they were going back to Medina, now Muhammad Sallam had retrieved back all of his camels. When they were on their way back, Muhammad Sallam was, just out of love and respect for Salama. Salama was riding with Muhammad Sallam, and they were talking, and Muhammad Sallam used to always give huge amounts of respect for those who he saw give a lot of sacrifice for himself and for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so they were riding, and there was one man of the Anṣar who was on foot as they were going back into Medina. And they were so excited, this man of Anṣar, he said, who will challenge me to a race? And this Ansari was a very, very fast runner, super fast. And he said, who will chase me? Who will race me into Medina? Because they weren't too far from there. And so Salama was riding behind Muhammad Sallam, and he said, Ya Rasul, may my mother and my father be ransom for you. Please give me permission so I can shut this man up and race him. So Muhammad said, no problem, you go ahead. And he quickly jumped off and he raced off into Medina, and he gave him a head start, and he literally went past him in no time. He was almost like a sprinter. That's how quick this man was. And so this expedition was just one of the many expeditions that continuously Muhammad Sallam was trying to neutralize all of these different various groups and people that were trying to attack Muhammad Sallam. Now, one of the other events that happened also within this year was the raid or the expedition against a tribe called the Banu Mustaliq. Okay, it's a very famous story in the Seerah. Now, Banu Mustaliq, actually, before I finish, I did forget one single point. Now, we forgot to mention about what happened to the wife of the shepherd that got killed because she got kidnapped. The story goes on to say that this woman, when they escaped on the first or second night, they made camp. So the enemy, the people of Uwaina, made camp, and they had created like a temporary confound for these camels where they just grazed in while they slept at night. So the woman, she woke up at night and she prepared herself to escape. She took one of the camels, and these camels, don't forget, they all belong to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she jumped onto the camel and she made a vow to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She made an oath to Allah. And she said to Allah, "Oh Allah, if you make me succeed in escaping from these people, I swear to you that when I arrive in Medina, I will sacrifice this camel in your name." Because remember, to show our goodwill and to show our thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we always sacrifice sheep and goats and camels, etc. This practice that we do today is something, if you feel you've had a favor from Allah, then you make this sacrifice and you feed the poor. When she arrived back into Medina, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam greeted her. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "It looks like that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected you and brought you back." And she said to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that I vowed that if God were to allow me to escape on this camel, that I would slaughter it. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam responded to her and said to her, "This is a bad vow, a bad oath that you had made to slaughter this animal. And the reason why is because that camel does not belong to you. This camel belongs to me." And therefore he went on to say, which is a hadith, he said, "No vow or no oath in obedience to God is valid, nor is one relating to what one does not own." So when you make an oath, sometimes we just say it. So even Allah says in the Quran that if you make an oath without real good intention, that you didn't really intend to do it, that oath is invalid. If you make an oath on something that doesn't belong to you, it's like me saying, I swear, if I pass my exams today, I'm going to go to my mate's house and I'll take his car and I'm going to give it away to the poor. Can't do that. That car doesn't belong to you. Okay. So this is the ruling that any of these oaths that are made based upon something that you're going to sacrifice that doesn't belong to you is null and void. So that was the one of the fiqh issues that came out in regards to this subject, and obviously the woman came back safe, alhamdulillah. Now the expedition of the Banu al-Mustaliq. So let's get a little bit background about this particular tribe. It's a very famous story. And you'll know why it's a famous story, because Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam married one of the women from this particular tribe. So who were the Banu al-Mustaliq? So Banu Mustaliq, they were a tribe they were a sub-tribe of the Khuzā. The Khuzā tribe originated from Yemen, and therefore and if you remember from the early stage of the Seerah, we talked about the Adaniya and the Qataniya, different tribes. So these are the pure Arabs, are called the Qataniya. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he's a descendant of Hazrat Ismail and his and obviously from his mother at that time, long time back, who was married to Ismail, she was a pure Yemen from the Jurham tribe. Therefore, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they emanated from them. So he was effectively a half caste. They referred to him as the Adaniya. So the pure Arabs were from Yemen. They were called the Qataniya tribe. So this Banu Mustaliq were basically from Yemen. They were a Qataniya tribe. Now, they also, couple of reasons why this incident happened in regarding to Banu Mustaliq. First of all, Banu Mustaliq has a leader by the name of Al-Harith ibn Abu Dirar. Very famous leader of this particular tribe. And he was the one that made the deal with the Quraysh to also participate in the war and the fight against the Muslims in the Battle of Uhud. So they had a huge presence in the Battle of Uhud, fighting against Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That was one of the reasons why Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam wanted to deal with this tribe. The second reason was that Banu Mustaliq, if you look at the map between Mecca and Medina, they govern a certain territory which is a pathway from Medina to Mecca. Now, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam knew that this was going to become a problem in the future, because whenever Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a plan, and of course he wanted to take Mecca and spread Islam to Mecca, He did not want any obstacles in the way. And he knew that the Quraysh used this as a buffer point as well, so that they could get to this. Like, for example, if they ever tried to attack Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they could get as far as up to this region without having any worry that the Muslims will attack them. So it became like a buffer point and a protection zone for the Quraysh. So that was the other reason. They wanted to eradicate their position between the two cities. And the other reason, and the main reason for this attack at this point in time, was because rumors came out that the Banu Mustaliq, under the leadership of Al-Harith ibn Abu Dirar, were planning a huge attack against the Muslims in Medina. Now, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam doesn't shoot from the hip. He doesn't react very quickly like this from the perspective of jumping to conclusions. So what Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had done is that he arranged for a spy to enter into their camp to confirm if this was true. Now, these tribes, a lot of tribes, they move around in different places. So it's very hard to tell if a tribe went from A to B, that they are on their way to attack you. They could be just moving as a tribe, because depending on the seasons, certain parts of the Arabian lands will be dried out too much. You want to go where there's water, and then you move to different locations. So he had sent one Sahabi by the name of Buraidah ibn al-Hasib, and he asked Buraidah, I need you to go into the tribe of Banu Mustaliq as a spy, undercover, and stay with them for a while and confirm if they are planning an attack against us. So Buraidah radiallahu anhu went, traveled for a few days, arrived there, and he met up with some of the leaders. And he said to the leaders, I'm here because I hear that you're planning an attack against the Muslims, and I want to join you. And they said and confirmed, that's correct. We are planning a massive big campaign and preparing this army to attack the Muslims. And that was the confirmation that he needed. As soon as he's got that information, Buraidah left after a couple of days of being there, and he returned back to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and told him they are on for a plan to attack us. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam immediately called the adhan, and he called on for the army, and he gathered up 700 Muslim fighters, whoever can come. Now, just be aware now, okay? Look, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, even though, mashallah, those Muslims have gone through many wars, many battles, where their iman is being tested and so forth, remember that Medina is still plagued with the munafiqs, with the hypocrites. And the hypocrites selectively choose which campaigns that they want to participate in, because they want to go for easy picking. If you take 700 soldiers against 10 men and you can take some booty off them, you know what? That's easy money. They were very greedy and very selfish. And not just for that reason, hypocrites always like to go with the Muslims because they like to stir trouble as well, which we will find out later on in this particular story. So 700 Muslim fighters prepared themselves in an army with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they left, made their way to an area where there's a big reservoir water well called Al-Muraysī. Now, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he was getting very close to this region, now the Banu Mustaliq had no idea that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was turning up for an attack on them. As far as they were concerned, nobody knew that they were coming. They were preparing themselves in a few days then to go and attack the Muslims. So Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes very close to Muraysi. He has Abu Bakr Siddiq holding up the banner, right, for war. And then he says to Umar bin al-Khattab, he says, get close enough to them, and I want you to cry out, scream out to them. I want you to say to them, La ilaha illallah. I want you to ask them, take the shahada. And if you do this, then you will protect your own life and your property. And so Umar bin al-Khattab, he went forward on his horse, went close to them, and he shouted out and screamed out to them, alarmed them with this shahada, and they were shocked that he had turned up, but they were not willing to give up. They were a tribe of fighters, and they were not willing to just drop down their swords so easily, and they refused. And so when they refused, immediately they gathered their army into positions, and I'm talking about the Banu Mustaliq, and they started to fire arrows at the Muslims. So the Muslims returned fire, and they went in, for the attack, and eventually they only had killed 10 of the Banu Mustaliq, and none of the Muslims. Actually, one of the Muslims had been killed. We'll talk about that in a second. And so they managed to capture everyone, the women, the children, many of the men. So the men had been killed, and they captured all of the men as well as prisoners. What was interesting in this particular exchange of arrows was that there was a Muslim by the name of Hisham bin Subaba that was killed by an Ansari by accident. Hisham was a Muslim, and as you know, that in these warfares, you know, when you're firing arrows, when you're wielding your sword all over the place, there's always casualties, right? There's always casualties by mistake. And this man, Hisham bin Subaba, had been killed by an Ansari. Story went on after this, that later on, that Hisham bin Subaba was from Mecca. So he was one of the al-Muhajirun. So he had a brother by the name of Miqyas, who was a idol worshipper, a polytheist in Mecca. And he heard about the fact that his brother had been killed. So what happened, this is much later, by the way, but it's good to this is key story to point out, because this will explain an event that happens later on in the conquest of Mecca. So Miqyas, he arrives into Medina later on, the brother of Hisham that had been killed by accident. And he arrives into Medina and he says to Muhammad ﷺ that I have become Muslim, okay, but I demand the blood money for my brother. So as the leader of a state, Muhammad ﷺ said it's in your right to ask for blood money for your brother. So he was paid out for this Muslim that was killed. So Miqyas took the money, but during the night, when nobody was looking, he snuck in and he killed this Ansari in cold blood. He took revenge. Immediately after killing him, he gathered his stuff, jumped on his horse, and left Medina and made his way back to Mecca. And there, obviously, he told everyone, I never, ever accepted Islam from my heart. It was just a trick. And therefore, let people be aware, I denounce Islam. I know I took Shahada in front of them, but I denounce Islam. It was all a trick. This is why later on, when we come to that story, maybe in about a month or so, when Muhammad ﷺ eventually conquered Mecca, there were four people that were executed in Mecca, in the Fatah Mecca. 4 people were executed. Miqyas was one of them. Now you know the reason why he was executed, because of the fact of the treachery, the fact that he claimed himself to be a Muslim, denounced Islam, took the money, and killed the Muslim in cold blood. Okay, so that was one of the events that happened. So we'll just keep that in our back of our mind as we come to that story, inshallah, soon. Now, after everyone was captured during this raid on Banu Mustaliq, an event occurred between the Anṣar and the Muhajirun. You see, the hypocrites take every opportunity to really weaken the Muslims. There are many kinds of hypocrites in our society. There are those who are truly hardcore hypocrites that in their hearts and their mind, they have no acceptance of Allah. They do not accept him. They do not accept Muhammad ﷺ, and they reject them, and they pretend to be Muslims, and they have a particular job, they have a particular objective to weaken the resolve of the Muslims. And then you have the light hypocrites, the ones that are half and half. They almost like they want to live their life partly with Islam, and they want to live their life partly with kufr. It's meaning that they only want to go to Allah when it's time for Ramadan or when it's time for Jummah, and then outside of this, they make everyone else their God. They make everyone else their prophet. Anyone else can guide them towards money, towards wealth, and they will inevitably at certain points in time, when the choice comes between doing what Allah wants you to do, what is fard, compared to what they want you to do, you will always give up Allah first. Okay, so there are people that were like that. Now remember that these hypocrites, they existed, and some of them eventually became Muslims. They came out of hypocrisy, and that door is always open for all of us, and we'll see that. When they were at this reservoir or at this lake, and everyone had been captured, the Muslims sat down and they were resting. Hazrat Umar, he had a man that he had hired from Mecca by the name of Jahja bin Masood. Now, Jahja bin Masood took Umar bin Khattab's horse and took him to the water so that he could drink. Now, as he was leading his horse, he bumps into one of the men of the Khazraj tribe. He may well have been a hypocrite. We have no idea. We don't know much about this individual. But the man he bumped, almost like bumped shoulders, was a man by the name of Sinan bin Wabr. And he was from the native original Medina tribes. When they bumped, they got into an argument. It's like happens all the time. It's like, you see most of the Muslims walking around Slough and they end up bumping each other. What are you looking at? Why'd you do that for? Next thing you know it, the whole bloody family comes down, call their taxi driver mates, ridiculous. And this is exactly what did happen. Okay. So this particular situation occurred. Now, as they started to fight, what happened was this man shouted out, Jahja shouted out for the help of the Muhajirun, and this man Sinan called out for the help of the people of the Medina tribe. Now, when Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam heard about this angered him. Okay, I'm just going to make one point about this. This angered him because he said, "You are all Muslims, but I dislike this calling that you do." The calling that they were doing is like, he said, whenever you're in trouble between two Muslims, why do you say, "Oh, Mirza clan, I need you here," or Jat clan, I need you here? Because what you're doing is that you're going back to your tribal ways, which Islam has tried to eradicate. You are all Muslims now. If you have a problem with each other, this isn't a problem between tribes. This isn't a problem between, different khandans. Bring Muslims forward to resolve this problem. So he did not like this. That why did you immediately, when you had a problem with this Muslim and you had a problem with this Muslim, why did you call upon your tribe as opposed to say, "Ya Muslims, come here to resolve this problem"? So when this occurred, the first man that turned up on the scene was the well-known leader of the hypocrites, or the king of the hypocrites, Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul. He turned up, big shoulders, very angry, and this big argument just flared up. Everyone gathered around, everyone's there threatening each other. And there was a young boy by the name of Zayd bin Arqam. He was a young boy that was with Abdullah bin Ubay at the time. Now, Abdullah bin Ubay, in front of everybody, he said to the people of Medina, as they were talking, that this is what happened. They kicked off and they started saying such and such thing. And he said to them, did they really cause this trouble? They challenge us and they outnumber us in our lands. They come to our land, into Medina he's referring to. He said, I swear by God, there's an old saying which well applies to us. And these are the Quraysh ruffians, where they say, fatten your dog and you will get to eat it. I swear, when we return to Medina, the stronger will drive out the weaker. So Abdullah bin Ubay is saying, how dare they say this to us? We allow them to come into our land and they start to bully us now. They try to behave this way. There is a famous saying, you have a dog, feed him, make him look good. And when they're fat enough, slaughter them and eat them. We'll see. When we get to Medina, we will see who will stay in Medina. Either we will stay or they will stay. Now, this young kid, Zayd bin Arqam, when he heard this, he went back to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and he said to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ya Rasul, Messenger of Allah, this is what I heard. When Umar ibn Khattab heard this and he was with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he became so angry. First, he said to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let me strike the neck of Abdullah bin Ubay, this hypocrite, the fitna that he's starting. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, you can't kill him. And then he said, let Abad bin Bishar, who was one of his tribal people, let him kill him. And then Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, look, Umar, How would it be to have people say that Muhammad kills his own companions? Don't do this. This won't look good on us. The kuffar, that's what they want to say. They want to look upon us and say, look how the Muslims treat each other. We get that already today. People say to us, the non-Muslims, they say, you talk about your brotherhood, you talk about how bonded you are, and yet you're fighting each other. The whole of Slough, the whole of Birmingham, the whole of Manchester, the whole of Sheffield is nothing but gang warfare between Muslims because they're trying to deal drugs in certain territories. This is the relationship that Muslims have amongst themselves. Muhammad is saying, well, how would it look if I kill my own people, yet we are killing each other? Because of wealth, because of money, because of greed, because of selfishness, because of stupidity, because of our stupid, tribal morals and values. Nothing based on Islam. So Muhammad said to Umar, go to them and prepare them to leave. We're going to leave now. Get them ready. So what was strange about this request was this was in the daytime. And usually in this hot weather, it is an unusual time when Muhammad ﷺ ever gets the army to get up and leave. So this was a very unusual for Muhammad ﷺ to give this instruction. Now, Abdullah bin Ubay heard that this boy, Zayd bin Arqam, had come to Muhammad ﷺ and told him what he had said. So Abdullah bin Ubay came to Muhammad ﷺ and he said to the messenger, he said, "Oh messenger of God, perhaps, this boy has misunderstood what I said, or his memory isn't right. But I swear to God, I did not say any of this." And Muhammad ﷺ, being the way that he is, he wanted to give Abdullah bin Ubay that benefit of the doubt. And the Sahabi just looked at Muhammad ﷺ. He said, look, maybe it's right. Maybe the boy misunderstood or misquoted what he said. Okay, or maybe his memory is, a little bit jogged, right? I mean, people were, it was a bit of a scary point, right? It looks like there was a big fight going on. So let's leave it at that. So anyway, they set off and they started to journey back towards Medina. One Sahabi, Usayd bin Hudayr radiyallahu anhu, came up to Muhammad ﷺ as they were riding. And he said to Muhammad ﷺ, "O Messenger of God, aren't you out traveling at a very unpleasant time when you don't usually do this? I mean, look at the weather. I mean, this isn't a time we normally travel." Muhammad ﷺ looked at him and then he looked behind him at everybody else. And he said to him, "Didn't you hear what your friend said?" Meaning Abdullah bin Ubay. And he said, "What are you talking about, Abdullah bin Ubay?" He said, he said, that he said that when we go back to Medina, that the stronger will drive out the weaker, that he has an intention and a plan to remove the Muhajirun. Usayd said to Muhammad ﷺ, "Well, I swear by God, Messenger of Allah, you will drive him out whenever you like. You have that power and you have that clout. Don't worry about him. He can say whatever he wants. He's certainly the weak one, and you are the stronger one," meaning in position. But Usayd said to Muhammad ﷺ, "But look, be kind on this man. Have a bit of mercy on him. God brought you to us in Medina at a time when his men were making his crown out of pearls, meaning that we were just about to crown him as the leader of Medina, and then that moment you turned up, and then they elected you. So obviously he's going to have it in his heart a little bit that he feels a little bit, sick to the heart, that fact that you took the crown, So let's just give him a little bit of slack." So Muhammad ﷺ said, "Fine, it is what it is. Let's leave it at that." On their journey back, what was interesting, and before we get closer to Medina, on his journey back, Muhammad ﷺ arrived at an area called Bakr. Now, when he arrived there was a very severe wind that blew. It was a very unusual kind of wind. They don't really experience it a lot, but when it happened, it scared the Muslims quite a bit. And they said to Ya Rasul, "What is this wind?" And Muhammad ﷺ responded back. He said, "Don't be afraid. It is blowing in this manner because of a death of one of the unbelievers chief. And they found out when they arrived back in Medina that Rifā bin Zayd bin Thabit, who was part of the Banu Qaynuqa, that he actually had died. And it doesn't mean that he was in Medina, that news had come out in Medina, that this chieftain who was very much against the Muslims had died. Now, this happened several times, right? There was another hadith that talked about when a wind was blown very heavily that scared and shocked the Muslims. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say that this is an indication that one of the hypocrites have died as well. Now, what is really beautiful about this story is about how we get challenged in a situation when it comes to our belief in Islam versus our love for other things which aren't necessarily conducive to Islam. Abdullah bin Ubay had a son by the name of Abdullah as well. And Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was having a conversation with Abdullah. Abdullah, the son of Abdullah bin Ubay, said, "O Messenger of God, I have heard that you want to kill my father Abdullah bin Ubay because of what you were informed about him," meaning him being a hypocrite. "If this is so, then Ya Rasul, then order me to do it. I will bring you my father's head. I swear that the Khazraj, the tribe that they're from, well know that there's no man more loyal to his father than me. I love my father. But I fear that if you order someone other than myself to do it, and he does kill him, then in my heart it will not allow me to look upon that killer of my father and allow him, or allow me to allow him to walk freely among the people. And so I will then be in a position where I will feel like I need to kill a believer in exchange for what he had done to my father, and I will not enter paradise. I will go to hell." So what his son is saying to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is basically, if you're going to order the execution of my father, then let me do it. I understand that if this is the case, that Allah has revealed that he is a hypocrite, then let me do it. I'm willing to do it for the sake of Allah. And look at Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's response. He smiled at Abdullah and he said, "On the contrary, we will treat him kindly and we will enjoy his company so long as he stays with us." So at that point, thereafter, even Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the fact that Muhammad didn't do anything to him, and they knew that this fitna at this particular expedition was caused by Abdullah bin Ubay, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to Umar bin Khattab and he said, "What do you think now, Umar?" Because what had happened was people started to berate Abdullah bin Ubay, even some of the hypocrites, even some of the non-Muslims who hadn't become Muslims, or even the ones that had very strong relationship with Abdullah bin Ubay, they started to berate him. And really, his position as a leader and a respected person came down. And so Muhammad said to Umar bin Khattab, "Well, what do you think now, Umar? I swear, if I had killed him," as Umar bin Khattab said, "I swear, if I had killed him on the day that you suggested it, there would have been much resentment." So Muhammad was saying to Umar that if I had killed him on the day you told me to, there would have been so much resentment for the fact that I'd killed him. But if I were to order his death today, now, because of what's happened, people have ended up coming back here, they will certainly jump up fast ahead of me to kill him. Look, his own son is saying to me, let me kill him. You see, patience, sabr, and time will expose everyone, and it will make your situation very easy. There was also a case when they arrived, so when all these 700 soldiers plus the Banu Mustaliq were coming into Medina, the son of Abdullah bin Ubay was guarding the gates of Medina. And as he stood there, he saw his father come. And as his father came forward, his son took out the sword and put it to his father's neck. And he said to Abdullah bin Ubay, his father, "Stop. By Allah, you will not enter until the messenger of Allah gives you permission to do so." This is how Abdullah had so much respect for Islam, and that his love and affection for Islam was even over the love and affection for his father. That the fact that you turned against the Muslims, I will not let you enter Medina until Muhammad gives you permission. And Muhammad gave him permission. So why did Muhammad SAW tell this army to pack up and move? The reason why he did that, he said to Hudayr, to Usayd bin Hudayr in this conversation, the reason why I got them to move now, he said, look at them. When they stopped by after one whole day of journey, they were so tired and so exhausted, they couldn't even think about the big argument that happened a few hours back. See how clever Muhammad SAW was. If you had left everyone there, you know what they always say, like there's a big fight that's going to break out between family members, or, you know, if you're at college and you're all there, if you remain there, then you keep continuously getting heated up because you're verbally sending these insults to each other, or you're trying to attack each other. First thing to do is, what do they say? They say, break up the crowd. Break up the crowd, move them apart, take them somewhere else, keep them occupied. And it's exactly what Muhammad SAW done. He kept them occupied, moved them away. They became so tired they couldn't even think about the issue that they had. And they completely, their hearts calmed down. So this is what had happened. Now, just moving back into the last section of this story, we talked about how when Muhammad SAW captured all of the Banu Mustaliq, that he had divided all of the members of the Banu Mustaliq amongst the army of the Muslims. What was really interesting about this story was a story regarding Juwayriyah radiallahu anha. Now, Juwayriyah was the daughter of this Al-Harith, the leader of the Banu Mustaliq. And what had happened was, as Muhammad SAW divided all of these men and women amongst all of the army, Juwayriyah was awarded as a slave to Thabit bin Qais, one of the Sahabi. Now, Juwayriyah was about 20 years old. She was very sweet and she was a very attractive woman. And Hazrat Aisha narrated in the hadith, she said that any man would literally fall over her because she was so good looking and she was such an elegant woman as well. So Juwayriyah was not happy with the fact that she was obviously now a slave and that she was being handed over to Thabit bin Qais. So she wanted to write down a contract with Thabit bin Qais to say, when I have enough money or money comes, that you agree that you will free me. That if I pay you off, I can buy my freedom. Because sometimes a master doesn't have to sell the slave, so you can remain as my slave. You know, there was no such thing as that you could buy yourself out. This is only something that Islam introduced in the old Quraysh days, or in the old Arabian tribal. Nope, it's up to the master if he wants to release you or not. So she wanted to make sure, because she's thinking, she doesn't understand the Muslims and their mentality. She doesn't understand the fairness of Islam. And she's about to learn this very soon. So she says, I want to write this contract down. So she said, I want to see Muhammad first. So she goes to see Muhammad. And Hazrat Aisha, she narrates in his hadith that the moment I saw Juwayriyah, and the moment she wanted to see Muhammad, I hated her. She was so beautiful, this girl. I knew that what I saw in her is what my husband, Muhammad, the messenger of Allah, will see in her. So Muhammad Sallam, when she came in to see Muhammad Sallam, she said to Muhammad Sallam that, look, I am, and this is the first thing she said, I'm Juwayriyah, the daughter of Al-Harith, the leader of this tribe. That's the first alarm bell that went off into Muhammad Sallam's mind. So you're the daughter of the leader. Okay. And how can I help you? You gave me over to Thabit bin Qais. So I want to write I want to write a contract whereby if I have the money or somebody is willing, and she knew, because her father had escaped, she knew that her father will buy her freedom. If somebody comes to buy my freedom, Thabit bin Qais has to accept the money and allow me to go free. So Muhammad Sallam said to Juwayriyah, how about if I offer you something better than this? She said, what is it? He said, what if I buy your freedom and I ask you to marry me? Immediately, Juwayriyah was very happy and she said, I accept your deal. Now, The moment that Muhammad ﷺ had offered to get married to Juwairiya, Muslim did not issue a single command, and he cannot issue a single command to any of the Muslims to do this act, which is going to happen now. When the news came out that Muhammad ﷺ was going to marry Juwairiya, over 100 members of those people that were captured were family members of the Al-Harith family, meaning they were cousins and related very closely to Juwairiya. Immediately, all the Muslims said, we cannot keep these people as slaves because they are related to now Muhammad ﷺ. And they were freed. That's it. They were made free. This was the intention of Muhammad ﷺ. Why did Juwairiya accept the marriage proposal so quickly? 3 days before the arrival of Muhammad ﷺ to Banu Mustaliq, Hazrat Juwairiya radiallahu anha narrated in a hadith, she said, I had a dream for 3 days before he arrived. She said, in my dream, I kept on seeing the moon come from Medina and go up and land in my lap. Second day, a moon from Medina came and landed in my lap. And the moon came from Medina and landed in my lap. And when Muhammad ﷺ arrived, I knew straight away that's what my dream was about. It was my marriage to this man. So she was already prepared. Allah Ta'ala had already prepared her in her mind. So Juwairiya now became the wife of Muhammad ﷺ. And as a result of that, the single act that Juwairiya had done had freed all of these people from her tribe. And many of these people from her tribe, when they were freed, they embraced Islam because they were shocked to see something that was unusual. This was not the normal practice of the Arabs. This was not the normal practice. It's almost like today. You know, we in our customs, in our Pakistani customs, the way we are, the way we behave, etc. There's many things that you could probably point out and single out and say, you know, if you can take these things out and bring the real, true light of Islam, people would love us even more. You know, it's like, and many times it's like when you have a conversation with, you know, a Sikh friend or a Hindu friend or even a Christian and say, well, you know, you Pakistanis, you do this and you do that and you behave like this and none of this comes from Islam. They always pick on those customs and those attitude and behaviors that we have, which have nothing to do with Islam. If we brought forward our Islam, our morals of Islam, our rulings of Islam, allow them to see this, my God, I'm telling you now, you wouldn't even have to utter a word to a non-Muslims about Islam. Just by your mere actions, they will be impressed and they would embrace Islam. After all, this is what happened 1400 years ago. How do you think many of these nations even became Muslim? Before the Muslims even arrived in their lands, they were happy to become Muslims because they knew of the way that they behaved. They knew of their morals, ground, their values and their hukams and their fairness and their love and their affection. This impressed them. This impressed them to a large degree. So you see now that now Juwairiya now becomes the wife of Muhammad ﷺ. And lastly, in the last point, inshallah, what happened was when Muhammad ﷺ eventually came back to Medina, of course, the father would come back to rescue the daughter. So Al-Harith eventually arrived into Medina to come and free his daughter. And lo and behold, he had the shock of his life. He saw his daughter right there by the side of Muhammad ﷺ, and she told him that I am now the wife of this man, the messenger of Allah. And all of the family members that were arrested and were taken as slave have been freed. And Al-Harith was so impressed by Muhammad ﷺ and what happened, because of all the rubbish rumors and the stuff that he was hearing continuously from the Quraysh and the Jews turned out to be a whole bunch of lies. He saw a side of Islam that he did not see before. And at that point, he became Muslim. So next week, inshallah, now, there is one other part of this story which we are going to cover, which is a very important and really is one of the milestones of Islam. It is the calamitous attack against Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha. This is their journey back into Medina. Event occurred where there was a rumor that was being spread about Hazrat Aisha. And in this, this created a lot of issues amongst the Muslims, but one that had to happen, and for Muhammad ﷺ to deal with, and that created one of the major Sharia rules in regards to making accusations against people. A lesson that we can all take from as well. So Jazakallah khair, inshallah.